Before we dive into this latest sci-fi epic, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
The broadcast that broke the galaxy. Attention Krynn fleet, this is Lira Voss of Veyra 4. You glassed our cities, but you failed, we're still here. And guess what? We found your mothership's coordinates. So sleep with one eye open, you alien scum. Jaxon Marrick crouched in the guts of a dead Krynn dropship, its biomechanical innards still twitching, pulsing with dying signals. The ship was a grotesque fusion of metal and flesh, its semi-organic circuits oozing a thick, black ichor that reeked of ammonia and decaying meat. The stale, metallic scent of blood mixed with the acrid tang of burning polymers, creating a nauseating miasma that clung to the humid air. His gloved fingers worked feverishly, slipping against the warm, sinewy cables as he jammed a plasma torch into the neural core, rerouting circuits, overriding security protocols. His datapad flickered, struggling against the alien encryption, strange symbols shifting like living things across the screen. Almost got you, he muttered, his breath fogging the inside of his cracked visor. His heartbeat pounded against his ribs, a rapid staccato that drowned out the distant hum of shipyard machinery. Beyond the ruined dropship, the shipyard was a graveyard of twisted hulls and shattered vessels, their remains jutting out of the blackened ground like broken bones. The rhythmic clicking of Krynn patrols echoed through the skeletal remains of the war-torn docking bays. Their elongated shadows stretched across the walls, flickering under the malfunctioning emergency lights as they prowled with a predator's grace. The scraping of their clawed feet against metal sent a shiver down Jackson's spine. Lyra's voice crackled in his earpiece, sharp and urgent. "Hurry up, genius. They're coming. I need 30 seconds. You've got 10. The dropship shuddered as the last firewall broke. Jackson's HUD flashed, systems online. A slow grin spread across his face, teeth bared in triumph. Good enough. The Krynn rounded the corner, mandibles flaring, their black carapaces gleaming under the dim glow of failing lights. Their guttural hissing filled the air, a grotesque, chittering war song that sent a primal pulse of fear through Jackson's veins. He tapped the control link. The dropship's cannons groaned as they rotated, servos grinding with the weight of their ancient mechanisms. The Krynn froze, multiple glowing eyes widening as the weapons locked onto them. "Welcome to Veyra," he whispered, slamming the trigger. A thunderous roar ripped through the corridor as a torrent of plasma fire erupted from the dropship's cannons. The Krynn screeched as their bodies were torn apart, molten chitin and sizzling flesh splattering against the walls. The air thickened with the sickly sweet stench of burning alien tissue, mingling with the metallic tang of blood and ozone. Smoke curled from the barrels as the last echoes of gunfire faded, leaving only the wet thuds of lifeless bodies hitting the ground. Jaxon exhaled, the tension in his shoulders unwinding as he wiped sweat from his brow. "Yeah, that'll do." Suddenly, the comm crackled again. This time, it wasn't Lira. "Jaxon, this is Captain Vale of the Iron Vow. We're inbound for extraction, but you need to secure the northern launch pad. You've got Krynn reinforcements moving in fast." Jackson's stomach clenched. Define fast. The answer came in the form of a distant, echoing roar. Then another. The shipyard trembled as something massive stirred in the distance. Heavy, thunderous footfalls rattled the deck plates, reverberating through the metal like the heartbeat of a god. Lira swore. "You hearing that?" "Yeah," Jaxon said grimly. "Sounds big." The blast doors at the far end of the shipyard groaned open, revealing the monstrous silhouette of a Krynn juggernaut. Its exoskeletal armor glowed with pulsing blue veins of energy, and its 4 burning eyes fixed on them with the unrelenting malice of a predator. It let out a deafening shriek, raising its massive war size, each blade crackling with plasma. "Oh, hell," Jaxon breathed. Lira didn't hesitate. "Move. Now." The juggernaut charged. Jaxon dove behind a stack of scorched cargo crates as the creature's blades sliced through steel like paper. Sparks showered the air, and the deafening clang of metal on metal echoed through the shipyard. Lira rolled under a collapsing walkway, barely dodging a plasma blast that melted through the deck where she'd been standing seconds before. Jaxon fumbled for his plasma rifle, cursing under his breath. Ideas. Lira ducked behind a support pillar, her mind racing. "Yeah, that big bastard's got a power core on its back. We hit that, we drop it. Got anything that can punch through Krynn shielding?" A wicked grin spread across Lyra's face. Just one thing. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a prototype charge, a fusion detonation round scavenged from a downed Krynn cruiser. The device pulsed with unstable energy, glowing with a furious orange light. Jaxon's eyes widened. That's not regulation. Neither is getting sliced in half. Cover me. Lira sprinted forward, weaving through the wreckage as plasma bolts exploded around her. The heat seared her armor, but she kept moving, her grip tight around the makeshift grenade. The juggernaut roared and swung one of its massive blades, barely missing as she vaulted over a broken transport sled. Jaxon opened fire, his plasma rounds hammering the juggernaut's armored carapace, drawing its attention just long enough for Lira to get behind it. She planted her foot against a broken strut, leapt onto the monster's back, and jammed the charge into the glowing power core. The juggernaut froze. Then, a piercing screech erupted from its maw as arcs of unstable energy surged through its body. Lira didn't wait for an invitation, she kicked off, landing hard on the deck as the charge detonated. A blinding shockwave tore through the shipyard. The juggernaut let out a final, agonized shriek before its entire torso erupted in a cascade of blue fire. Chitin and molten metal rained down as the beast collapsed, twitching violently before going still. For a moment, the only sound was the distant crackle of flames and the ragged breathing of two exhausted soldiers. Jaxon whistled. Okay, that was badass. Lira smirked, dusting herself off. You're welcome. The comm crackled again. Captain Vale's voice cut through the static. North launch pad is open. Get your asses here now. You've got 3 minutes before we leave without you. Lira and Jaxon exchanged a look. Guess we're not dead yet, she said. Jaxon reloaded his rifle, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. Then let's keep it that way. They sprinted into the chaos, ready for whatever hell came next. The Starforge refinery had become a war zone. Below Veyra, deep in the bowels of the factory, the heat was unbearable, an infernal furnace, churning out molten slag that would melt anything foolish enough to get too close. Yet Lira Voss wasn't backing down. The Krynn had taken control of the refinery's core, and with it, the heart of their jamming network. But Lira didn't care about the odds. She cared about one thing: survival. The countdown had already begun. T-minus 20 minutes. Lira's suit was already overheating, its systems flashing red warnings. Her visor was cracked from the last skirmish, giving everything an eerie glow as the molten rivers below bubbled and hissed. She adjusted her rifle, nothing fancy, just a standard Veyran assault rifle with a few hacked-up modifications. But right now, it was the only thing between her and the endless swarm of Krynn forces closing in. Remind me again why I'm doing this? Lira muttered, though she already knew the answer. A sharp crackle filled her ear. Because you're insane, came the gravelly voice of Commander Talia Vorn. Now quit whining and plant the damn charges. We don't have all day. Yeah, Lira grumbled, picking her way across the metallic wreckage of a collapsed platform. The Krynn were everywhere. Their bodies, their machine-like, insectoid forms, lined the hallways, their clicking mandibles reverberating through the air like a death drum. They were waiting for her. They always were. Lira slid into an alcove, breathing through the rising heat. The refinery's core was just ahead, its walls shimmering with internal fires, veins of molten metal crawling across the cracked steel. She was running out of time, and she could feel the walls closing in. Every second counted. A voice crackled in her earpiece. Lira, listen to me. The moment you plant those charges, the clock starts ticking, and there's no turning back. You won't have time to make it out. It was Jaxon Marrick, her partner in this madness, his tone unwavering. This is it. Just do what you're best at. Lira's heart raced. He was right. The moment she planted the explosives, the entire refinery would go up in flames. It would take down every Krynn jammer, cut off their communications, and give the Veyran forces a fighting chance. But if she wasn't out in time... Lira shook the thought away. She didn't have time for doubt. The control center loomed just ahead, a metal fortress surrounded by Krynn patrols. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening on the trigger of her rifle. One shot, and everything would change. She didn't hesitate. Lira leaped from the alcove, landing with a heavy thud. The Krynn spotted her immediately, their glowing eyes locking onto the human intruder. They hissed, their weaponry powered up in an instant. But Lira was faster. She fired once, twice, 3 times. Her rounds hit with pinpoint accuracy, each shot sending one of the enemy skittering back, its carapace shattered. The others hesitated for just a moment, unsure if their prey was a worthy challenge. That hesitation was all she needed. She dove toward the control panel, planting the charges with expert precision, her hands moving in practiced rhythm. The timer began counting down. 15 minutes. "Jax, I've planted them," Lira shouted, knowing full well the Krynn were closing in. The response was swift. "Distraction incoming. Hold tight." A deafening explosion rocked the refinery, and the walls shuddered violently. Lira didn't waste a second. She bolted, sprinting down the narrow corridors as the sounds of battle erupted behind her. Krynn drones swarmed from every direction, their pincers snapping and weapons charging. But Lira didn't slow. She didn't have time to fight them all. The explosions outside shook the ground beneath her boots, the shockwaves sending pieces of the refinery flying through the air like confetti. Lira barely registered the danger. Her focus was singular: get out. But she wasn't alone. "Keep moving." Jackson's voice echoed through her comms. "I've cleared the top deck. Your exit's through the east shaft." Lyra's HUD flashed a new route. She didn't hesitate. She darted through the wreckage, weaving between the collapsing infrastructure, debris raining down around her like a deadly storm. The heat was unbearable. Her suit was screaming at her, its internal systems pushing beyond their limits to keep her alive. And then the Krynn came. Out of nowhere, a pack of soldiers, clad in black armor, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the molten light, appeared in front of her. Lira skidded to a stop, raising her rifle in an instant. But they were faster. One of them lunged at her, its mandibles snapping with a sickening crack. She barely managed to sidestep the attack, slamming her elbow into its faceplate. The Krynn reeled back, enraged.